What is going on, Pooj crew? Thank you for being here for episode 131 of the Poojie podcast. It probably does not feel like that. Feels like episode 1, kind of. It's been 4 months since we've sat down and done a podcast. Work has gotten hectic. Time has gotten away from us. But if you turn on any sports network these days, they're talking football. So we figured let's get back into it. We have a packed show for you today, obviously highlighting all things Jacksonville Jaguars, the week 1 preseason game, or week 2, I don't even know what to consider it, against the Browns after opening up against the Raiders in the Hall of Fame game. More NFL storylines, hot takes, transitions, offseason moves, things like that. We'll get into all that. Our last episode was the NFL draft episode almost exactly 4 months ago, actually. But we have the same crew here with us today. As you know them, we got Kit Kat, we have Sam, and we have Big Mooch. Gentlemen, you might need to unmute yourself, except for Sam. He's already prepared, so we'll start with you. Sam, why are you looking all weird like that? What's going on with that?
What's going on, you guys? It's been a while. Glad to be back.
Been
Thanks
a
for the
hot
invite,
minute.
Justin. We back. It's football. Let's go. I know everyone's looking forward to it.
I might just need to get that tattooed on me. It's football.
It's ball. Time to ball.
You can't get that tone to go with it. That sounded like the least excited I'm excited for football I've ever heard.
I mean,
dude, it's freaking back.
The off season's where it's at. Everybody knows
maybe for Jags fans.
Yeah, Jags fans unfortunately have to get excited for the off season because the regular season is not good.
Did we win the off season?
Only one way to find out. I don't think we've ever won an off season.
I feel like that's what we get excited about.
Didn't we win the offseason in 2017?
We didn't know it, but yes, we did.
We did. I guess time will tell.
Yo, how's everyone feeling about Trent Baalke after everything that went down?
Hashtag masterclass.
Let me get some honest reactions. Jake,
God, starting off hot, dude. All the Jaguar Twitter mob is like, what'd you say, Jacob? What is it? Baalke.
It was hashtag Baalke masterclass all over Twitter. Everyone wanted the guy out of town, ourselves included. Has this draft, and I'm surprised people were excited for the picks we were making because Trayvon was considered like a risky number 1 overall pick. Getting double linebackers, people weren't sure about that either. It was just funny how the whole tide changed when it came to Baalke, and it looks like things are working out well for him so far.
You know, all right. All I have to say about Baalke is this: he comes in, starts his tenure with the Jaguars under Dave Caldwell, right? So he's like Dave Caldwell's right-hand man, doesn't have full reign over it. Then you see Dave Caldwell walk out the door just to see a head coach, he who should not be named, Urban Meyer, comes in, and he has the full reins to it. So Baalke still doesn't have a chance. So is it it's fair to say this was Baalke's first full season with the Jags in what I presume to be full control?
Who knows?
I think there were some picks that he made this year, but last year that you could be like, oh, that was Baalke. And then some of the picks that he made where I was like, oh, that was probably Urban Meyer's preferred guy.
You can definitely see Urban's hand in that draft class.
Right.
Like Luke Farrell was that.
Yeah, the ETN pick for sure.
I think it's really hard at this level to know who's fully in charge or who's making picks because Doug Peterson probably brings in a lot of experience in order to help aid those picks. Hey, I want this type of guy or I want this player here. And Baalke's not in a position to deny that, or else if it came out that Doug said, I want this guy, we don't get that guy, and then he succeeds on another team, then Shad Khan looks at him like, well, we could have had him and we didn't, and you went against it, and so now you're fired. So for me, at least personally, it's hard to tell how much is fully on Trent for the success. But I think that goes with any organization. It's a collective effort, even if they say, one thing or another.
At the end of the day, Meyer's greatest contribution to the city might be Travis Etienne when it's all said and done, if that ends up working out, and then the new practice facility that the Jags are getting right next to the stadium. So that's his legacy after what, a 1-13 start or a 1-12 start. His legacy is Travis Etienne, reach pick late in the first round, and a new practice facility. But we've done tons of episodes talking about Urban Meyer and Trent Baalke, and I hope it seems like fans are higher on Trent Baalke now than they've ever been. And the fact that we haven't heard about him in a long time should tell you all you need to know that he's doing an okay job. If we are hearing about him, like the clowns in week 18 last year with the Colts showing up to town and fans wearing clown outfits and stuff, like that's kind of how you know someone's doing a bad job. But we'll see how that plays out. But did everyone else have a good off season just waiting for football in general? Good off seasons for everyone?
I feel like
Mooch, you relocated. You're no longer in Jacksonville with us.
I know, down in Orlando. I'm actually closer to the Bucks, so I have to go to a bar just to watch the Jacksonville now because the Bucks are on every channel. So it's kind of a pain in the ass.
Wow. You're a remote scout out of Orlando. I guess you're closer. You're with Sam now too. So we're 2-2, Jacksonville and Orlando. Oh, well, Sam.
No, Sam
too.
I replaced Mitch.
Yes,
I now have the season tickets.
Again.
Breaking news, Jacksonville has submitted a trade to Orlando. Sam Leggett for Luke Mucci.
Who won the trade?
Oh, we're not going to get into that.
We're not going to get into that this episode. That's for next time.
Until I see Sam on the golf course, I'm not gonna calculate who won that trade. Because
Orlando should be getting an XFL team, so that's kind of fun.
They have everything except base. They have all they're like Jacksonville. They have all the minor league sports kind of. It feels like.
Yeah. But they should have an XFL team coming, which should be fun.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. It's like death taxes and another amateur football league popping up during the offseason. Like that's what it feels like. It feels like every offseason another league announces its return or that it's starting. And now we have the XFL coming back. So Orlando will have a team. Where are they playing? Citrus Bowl or Camping World?
Yeah, I think they're in the same stadium as Camping World.
Gotcha. I wasn't sure. They might be playing Exploria, but I don't know. So but yeah, glad everyone's doing well and glad to see Jacob and Sam at the tailgate this past weekend for the Jags-Browns game. Already signs of price gouging, not only inside the stadium, but parking prices outside the stadium due to construction, limited parking, and now prices to get into a preseason game. The lot goes from $20 up to $35. Woo. And it was $30 for the Jags-Bills playoff game 4 years ago. So either they're very bullish on the Jags or the city's just trying to make as much money as they can.
I'm hoping it's just because like half that lot was like not available. They're just trying to get as much as they can out of the other half. Because if it's just based on like, we have Doug Peterson now, $35 is what we're working with. I was shocked by that. I'm not gonna lie.
I might get my steps in and just walk.
I say we walk.
Just walk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a few extra beers. That way we don't need to drive.
Are we going back to Kings Avenue?
Back to
back to the parking garage.
The parking garage. Oh my god, that's so far.
Matt told me the price at the garage by the baseball stadium was also $35. So seems like we kind of got ripped off being about an extra quarter of a mile away. But hey, we got to see
construction. We walked around a complete opposite direction, it felt like.
Starting to come together down there.
Yeah, downtown. Sam, thoughts on downtown? Orlando for what, 4, 5, 6+ years? Back in Jacksonville, you had no idea the expressway was even torn down.
Right. Yeah, they're definitely doing some stuff around the stadium. And apparently I learned that they passed the $400 million, $200 million improvements around the shipyard. So that was pretty cool. They're already working on it as far as like the infrastructure, lights, streets and stuff. So that'll be pretty nice when it all comes together. They got a solid walkway down the riverside as you're walking to the stadium. I think it's gonna look real nice, and then bars obviously, and some place to actually hang out outside the stadium. Where
in a perfect world, hopefully the team progresses as downtown progresses, and then it's just like an explosion in Jacksonville of like a good football team in a fun downtown. And then no one knows what to do with themselves because we've never had either. So, I guess we did have a good football team like 20 years ago, but that'd be crazy for the city. Speaking of a good football team 20 years ago, did you guys watch Tony Baselli's Hall of Fame induction, or thoughts on the Baselli Hall of Fame induction?
Not really.
I did not watch it. I watched the Hall of Fame game. So if anyone did watch it, I will take notes from you guys.
Sam, did you watch it?
I watched his speech midway through the game, but I didn't watch like the ceremony or like them giving him. I guess they just they put the gold jacket on you and then they shake your hand.
I actually did watch it. It was a little odd because this year I don't know if Justin knows why, but
Sam just made that ceremony sound like getting inducted into like National Junior Honor Society.
I know, that's why I kind of took over. I was like, this is like our first Hall of Fame inductee, Sam. You just like put it on Tony Baselli. And it was weird though. They did it at 12. They did it at noon. I don't know if you know why. There was a reason why it wasn't on at night. But he had a good speech. Thanked a lot of his coaches. First Jag to get into the Hall of Fame, and now I'm just ready to start campaigning for Fred Taylor, who I think is 100% worth putting into the Hall. But Tony Baselli had to do it first, and he finally got over that hump.
Yeah, what I will say about it briefly before we jump to the Browns game is a lot of Hall of Fame classes are highlighted by like one or two superstar players, and we've seen that over the last 5 or 6 years, especially with our generation, because a lot of the guys getting inducted now are the guys that we grew up watching, like LaDainian Tomlinson and Ray Lewis and so on. Champ Bailey, my favorite player of all time. But I was kind of happy that there wasn't a superstar highlight player in this class because it didn't take away any of the spotlight from Tony Baselli. And he went in with Leroy Butler, not fellow Jacksonville native, a Jacksonville native. So 2 players with ties to the Jacksonville area. So that was pretty cool. But to the Browns game, Sam, Jacob, I know we were there. We enjoyed it. Luke, we were getting the updates from you. Your 6-word thoughts throughout the game in the group chat? First team offense looked solid.
No, I think I just sent like emojis, like first team offense, smiley face. Second half offense, it was just like tears or vomit, something like that.
I'm looking at it right now.
I never want to see any injuries on our team. If there's a single injury, I think we're going to lose that game, and I would bet the house on it.
Yeah, and I don't know why people keep picking the Jags to win these preseason games because the starters are barely good enough to beat another team's starters. And if you know the starters are only going to play for a quarter, the second team offense and defense for the Jags is not going to be anywhere near, matchup prone or a good matchup against another team's second team. So I'm just so confused by that. But starting out with the game, I mean, first 3 drives by Trevor Lawrence, moving the ball well, was an extremely fun thing to watch. First completed pass of this season, I guess, quote unquote, this season, even though it was the preseason, was that nice, 35-yard pass down the sideline to Zay Jones. Good body control by Zay Jones to make that catch. We just saw a lot of good things, I think, from the first team offense, and Brandon Sheriff played, if that's how you pronounce his name. He was on the line and he played well. He looked good. Overall, I mean, I was really happy. What are y'all's thoughts from the first team and some takeaways?
I think a very big surprise. Oh, do you want to go, Sam?
Well, no, you got it.
I think a very big surprise. Obviously, everyone, I think, primarily focused on the offense with Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson coming in. What's the offense going to look like? All this. But the starting unit on defense surprisingly held the Browns to, 7 yards total offensive yards in the first quarter. Deshaun Watson did not look great, so I don't know how much credit we can give the defense yet, but we were missing a few players like Devin Lloyd. Darius Williams didn't play, but Trayvon looked great. Josh Allen looked pretty good. I think that combination's looking great. We had a turnover. Rayshawn knocked a ball out with Trayvon Walker coming in too. Shaquille picked it up, and I think it was a surprising thing to see the starting defensive unit look as hot as it did. Like I said, I don't know how much Deshaun Watson is to blame for that because it looks like he's missing passes in practice too. But that was my takeaway. I think the offense was something we were expecting to improve, but I didn't know what the defense would look like yet.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was exciting to see the defense look as good, if not better, than the offense. Luke, let's go to you. Were you able to watch all the game, most of the game, first team? What were your thoughts?
So I watched the first half with Verben, and then at the second half, after seeing what already was happening, I was like, I'm not watching the rest of this. Half those players probably won't make it anyway. But I did love the fact that we went out 3 times with our starters, scored 3 times. I do think it's a little bit unnerving that we had to kick 2 field goals, especially since we started one drive within the 20. I mean, that one should have been easy 6. If we keep scoring field goals instead of touchdowns throughout the season, it's going to reflect on our score and we're going to lose games. But I do absolutely love the fact that we got to score 3 times out of 3. Just we need to get those touchdown conversions up.
Yeah, I would have to go look at the history over the last few years, even in the regular season or preseason, the last time the Jaguars scored on their first 3 possessions, because that just seemed like an anomaly. But it was nice to see. It was refreshing to see. And I felt like you could see Doug Peterson and co's, handprint on the offense. And it looked like a different offense. It looked like different play calling, which was refreshing. But Sam, let's bring you in here. Your thoughts on the game. I know you might have to leave here shortly, so feel free to give us what you got before you have to sign off.
No, I was going to kind of echo the same thing you're saying. I don't know the last time that you kind of like saw players wide open in our offense. It hasn't been a couple of years, and throughout the whole first half, there was clearly a scheme to where players would become open, either in the zone or down the field, like the one-on-one with Zay Jones early on. But I mean, there was plays, especially the one we scored on. I mean, that was a 4th and 2. And we easily could have kicked a field goal. We went for it, and Evan Ingram's wide open in the flat, like schemed open. Like, last year that didn't happen at all. So, I mean, it's definitely an improvement, and you can see the offensive minds at work. And then obviously, I know our defense, I'm pretty sure, we invested heavily on that side of the ball. So I'm glad to see us looking better, especially along the D-line. But, I mean, one thing that is going to be great is that our secondary, is going to be a lot better because we're getting that pressure on the quarterback. So I think you're going to see a lot more turnovers. These young guys look hungry out there. They're hyped up, and Tyson Campbell looks like the real deal. So super exciting for sure.
Yeah.
For us who've been watching it for a couple of years. I can say that the stadium was, electric. Definitely not the environment that it usually is. So it was a lot of fun going to that game, and I'm excited for this season. So
yeah, I think something important to note is, obviously the Jaguars in the grand scheme of things, the fan base is considerably smaller given the team's success and given the market size. But, I feel like this city, it's simple. The city just wants to see a winning product and see a good product on the field. And I think a lot of us would rather, lose a game 35-38 than lose a game 10-9, whatever it is. You just want to see points. You want to see competitiveness, and you want to see that game flow go with it. Obviously winning that playoff game, almost a half decade ago, 10-3. You take what you can when it comes to winning football games. But I think you hit a lot of good points there, Sam. And you talked about throwing Evan Ingram open. Did anyone else know who number 17 was before this game and the announcer announcing 17 as Evan Ingram? Because I was extremely confused knowing he was brought in as a tight end, but he looks like a receiver. His body size, everything about him, he's slender, and he just did not look like a prototypical tight end out there.
Yeah, and I think naturally he's not. He's more of a receiving tight end, so that's probably why you're going to start confusing him for DJ Chark until God knows when.
That's true.
He ran a 4.4 at the combine, I'm pretty sure. So the guy's going to be if he can catch the ball and we scheme him open into space, this guy is going to be great for us. It's going to be like Dan Arnold, but like a little bit more athletic. So
what was really interesting about that play where they threw him open, if I remember correctly, it was a kind of like a play action to the right, towards the right hash, I'm pretty sure. And he came over as if he was going to block inside, and I think he was matched up against either the nickel corner or the strong side linebacker, if I'm not mistaken. Well, anyway, whatever it was, he faked the block for about 2 seconds, and then he just used his speed to get open and get separation, and that's why he was so wide open. Like the coverage man had no chance to even get close to him. He caught the ball, and then he ran, the full 9 yards inside the red zone to get the touchdown too. So he used his speed to get into the end zone. That was refreshing and nice to see. And if him and Dan Arnold can get on the field at the same time and have 2 tight end sets, why not? Because we saw last year what Dan Arnold can do for this offense when we were slow and, just a terrible paced offense last year. Dan Arnold for most of the time was kind of a bright spot. So I'm kind of excited to see what the two of them can do.
Yeah, you can see the connection that Trevor Lawrence has with his tight ends. And then, of course, Trevor Lawrence wasn't without his flaws either. I mean, there are some weaknesses to his game that, a little bit, some misreads, some, overthrows, but it was all stuff that, he can take back for the week and work on. And that, he looked really crisp in this offense. There's going to be some downfield plays, but it's mostly like over the middle timing plays to hit receivers in space. So, he looked good out there. Definitely not without fault, though. There was a little bit of almost like rookie plays where it was like, just hit the guy. He's open. So.
Well, I think there's a place in specific right after that Zay Jones catch down the sideline. The very next play, I think he had Zay Jones wide open again, about 15 yards in the middle of the field, and just missed him over the top. And if I remember correctly, and I think a lot of us were extremely excited about the initial play, watching him hit Zay Jones deep, that we just kind of ignored the overthrow the very next play. Jacob, you mentioned Rayshawn Jenkins. Obviously, he's going to be playing safety for us, opposite of Andre Sisco is what it looks like at this moment. So it was good to see Rayshawn Jenkins get in there and make a play with Travon Walker, and then see Shaquille Griffin get the fumble. But I guess my question for you guys would be, considering the secondary last year had its flaws, Tyson Campbell looked like he was going to be a strong up-and-comer. A lot of us weren't certain about Rayshawn Jenkins. We kind of wanted to maybe go after someone in the offseason. On the defensive side of the ball after this game, just from the first, quarter or two that we saw, where would you say, maybe the glaring weakness is on the defensive side of the ball, and then potentially on the offensive side of the ball afterward? Any spots that stand out?
I think that the obvious answer is the bench is the huge weakness. We got a lot of good players that can start. And Chad Muma looks great as like the backup, linebacker, but he got, a ton of playing time. But it's like after him, and especially on like, the D line in the secondary, you're getting into, day 3 players and guys that, would struggle to make the team obviously in other places. But if you had to say one position group overall, I guess it's got to be the safeties. Like after Rayshawn and Andre Sisco, they were definitely struggling. Andrew Wingard looked like, he looked good. So it was like, oh, after him, it's like, oh gosh. But I'd probably say the safeties. But there were a few runs that got broken off that were just like the safety just completely whiffed. Like there was one where Wingard whiffs, and then like Daniel Thomas comes like screaming in from like the free safety position and just completely whiffs also. It's like, and then they break off for a huge run. But ticky-tack stuff. Our team looks good.
Daniel Thomas, I feel like he's been on this team forever. He's becoming that kind of guy where he's like, it doesn't feel like almost like a DeJuan Smoot, where he's just like on the team, and like he just doesn't. Or Tyler Shatley is another guy where there could be all this turnover, all these coaches changes, all the draft picks, all the free agents, and these guys still somehow find a way on the field in certain times. So
I feel like Smoot's been on our team since like 2015. Like he's always there. And he's never like a starting piece, but he's always on the team, and he has a sack or something in a game. It's amazing. And I think he's really amping up from where he's been over the last few years. I think he loves it in Jacksonville. He wants to provide for the team, so he gets a nice contract.
And he delivered his own baby. We all remember that story from last year.
That's remember that.
He's on the all hands team. You remember that, Sam?
Did he actually do that?
Yeah, like his wife was pregnant. She was in the living room, and then like she was like, "Oh, I'm having a baby," and then he like delivered the baby while the nurse was on the way to the house, and he made it happen. So we ever know if there's a fumble, he's got nice, delicate hands to pick up the ball.
He's got some poise.
He's
great under pressure. So I mean, I'm all about that.
Give him a contract extension. $100K bonus in the contract for delivering a child. That's huge. Arden Key's another guy. I mean, I don't want to go too deep into the depth because there's so many guys. There's so many new guys on this team, like Roy Robertson Harris and Arden Key. We still haven't seen Devin Lloyd. We still have not seen Darius Williams. There's guys on this team that will be on the field come week 1 that were not on the field against the Browns. So when it does come to holes, I'm very hesitant to be like, okay, this is a glaring hole because we're still not there all the way. Do we project maybe more first-team reps coming up against the Steelers? Is that kind of the idea?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the natural progression of preseason, which is exciting because we got that little taste of the first team on both offense and defense having good success. I'm curious if Christian Kirk will be back. I'm not really sure. I'm not up to date on like what his injury is. But I know he was kind of nicked up, so they're being careful with him. But just certain guys for me, I think one of the guys to look at, I don't know if Devin Lloyd, like where he's at, Chad Muma, I'm kind of curious to see him coming up again in this next game because he made some good plays. If we're talking about the defense and potential holes, that was always kind of looked at as a whole was the backup, a linebacker depth. In a 3-4, is he going to really be like a backup and more of a rotational piece? Probably more of a rotational piece, but to see like a Luakin out there, Devin Lloyd was out, but Muma making plays, that was always kind of like, where's our backups when it comes to the linebacker position? I don't know if we hopefully see better, play out of the safeties, but if we get great pass rush in this coming up game, that might be a hint that like any kind of lapse on the back end of the secondary hopefully is not as big of a weakness should anyone go down, because I felt we were getting some solid pressure, and we know that helps the back end of the defense enormously. So if we see a whole half, I don't know. What do you guys think? You think Trevor's going to play mid second quarter or all the way through half? What do you think?
So I think the way it is now is that the teams are going to play basically for a full half and then sit everybody, and then come the next game after that, they'll probably do like one drive and then just let all the people that are fighting for spots do it, because they want to get as much reps in now, and then that last game is literally trying to figure out who's making it and who's getting cut. But I am interested to see next week when we play the Steelers, A, if Najee Harris plays, and B, if we can shut that down, because we are in a run-heavy division here. I mean, you have Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor, people that are getting drafted in fantasy drafts very, very high because they are going to be used a lot. So I want to see our run defense next week or this week, because we definitely need to be able to stop that, and if we can't, we're in for a world of trouble.
That's a great point, Luke. And I don't know if you guys saw the article today, but Danny Shelton just got signed to the Kansas City Chiefs. And apparently he was between the Jags and the Chiefs. So it's obvious their coaching staff is looking to upgrade that interior, defensive line on first and second down, because we were kind of getting shredded by their backup, running backs on Friday. I don't know if you guys noticed that too. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but
yeah, it felt like as soon as some of the first team went out, it seemed like their running game picked up a ton.
Right. Well, they had a walk-in touchdown. Like the guy just kind of like, he could have crawled in there. And then the one big run early on, which our starters were in the game, or actually the big run down the field was backups. But early on in the game, they were getting some chunk plays. And in the Hall of Fame game, I mean, that whole first quarter, Josh Jacobs was kind of just having his way with our line. So, but I mean, it's obviously something that is a weakness, but I do think that the defensive, line as far as a pass rush is extremely good and has some depth to it. So,
yeah, it was Jerome Ford actually broke off a 41-yard run down the sideline. I think he got stopped around the 20, but they did only total 83 total yards. So almost 50% of it came from that one rush. But I think that a lot of that's attributed to the first team still being on the field and playing well against the run, and just not giving up a lot of yards. So their run per carry, their yards per carry was down. But again, as we all know, it just takes one big run to just change the dynamic of a game. So what is it? Stopping those explosive plays, keeping them within 5 to 10 yard, maximum carries or maximum gains. But Jerome Ford, a guy I will be rooting for, Jerome Ford, former Cincinnati Bearcat, excuse me. Great. Got a selfie with him on the field in Cincinnati back in 2018 or whenever we went, when we stormed the field after UCF lost.
Congrats. No, Luke has a great point, though. Like, we're playing in a division with Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry. Like, I mean, it's looking not good as far
even
as
Dameon Pierce looked pretty good in his game.
I mean, yeah, if we're just getting shredded by Dameon Pierce, then Jonathan Taylor is going to be having his way, which is positive for me in fantasy, but as a Jags fan, that would be not good. And especially, I mean, Derrick Henry's coming off his injury; he's going to be hungry. But yeah, we kind of got to address that in some way.
And the Titans losing AJ Brown, they might be leaning on Derrick Henry more. Malik Willis could see some time as well, to where they might be leaning on Derrick Henry more. Maybe is this the season where we see all that production catch up to Derrick Henry, all those carries over the last 5 years catch up to him, because
people are sleeping.
Obviously, it did. It caught up to him last season, obviously, with the injury catching up, and who knows if something like that
injury he's ever had.
I think if he was a normal human being, yes. I think we're still trying to figure out if those rules apply to Derrick Henry.
That's true.
Because most running backs, probably a Jonathan Taylor, he might be not as superhuman that maybe his production can catch up to him. Hopefully not for Sam, but hopefully for us. But Derrick Henry, I don't know. He just might be an alien.
Yeah, I think Derrick Henry could be like Superman in disguise, and we just don't know it.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Hey, to put it in perspective, obviously playing the Colts and the Titans twice, that's 4 games. That's almost 25% of the schedule with the new 17 games. And if Dameon Pierce comes out and he's a good running back, this might be one of the better divisions as far as running backs go. If James Robinson can come back healthy with Travis Etienne, if Dameon Pierce becomes something special, all 4 teams are going to have running backs that are pretty big deals to worry about in this division. But if Dameon Pierce is something special in Houston, that's 6 games we have to worry about the running game. And obviously, Colts having Matt Ryan now, Titans having Ryan Tannehill, still potentially Malik Willis. The Texans just trying to figure out how to be an NFL team. I do think the passing game is important to cover. And obviously, we've seen that in the past. We've seen the Colts shred us. I think Michael Pittman had some career games last year against us. But at the end of the day, you do have to just step up and stop those runs. And speaking of that, I think I sent you guys the screenshot. Rushing leader, 2022 rushing leader, Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor were both the favorites at plus 500, wide margin favorites for most yards this season. So,
yeah,
pretty interesting.
Yeah, no. So you guys didn't see that article where Danny Shelton was he came out in his I guess, after he got signed, he came out in a press conference. It was it was between the Jags and the Chiefs, and that just told me oh yeah, our coaching staff has realized that they have a problem and that they need to fix it. So
yeah, I mean, it feels like everything is covered outside of those 4 yards inside where the ball is snapped. But I mean, Dwayne Smoot kind of lives in there now that he's got extra pieces outside. Hopefully he can make some noise. Obviously we brought Malcolm Brown. We brought Foley in as well.
Right.
He looked a bit lighter than I expected when I saw him on the field. I know he was a bigger guy, but I mistook him for a defensive end. I know he's just kind of a bigger defensive end. But I think go ahead.
Go for it. I was going to say, it just feels to me like we have a lot of good players, but not a game changer at defensive tackle. And I know that's hard to come by, but we don't have the type of defensive tackle where it's okay, this guy's on the field. I feel comfortable with the up the middle run game. We don't have that kind of guy.
What I'm hoping is we've kind of always had those guys on the Jaguars. I think we've always had those guys that, we bring them in or we draft them and they could be something great. They could be something not great. And we don't know what's going to turn into, and 9 times out of 10, it turns into something not great. But I'm hoping that the Doug Peterson effect, having a an actual experienced head coach, a head coach that's played and won the Super Bowl, someone that knows what it takes to get the best out of guys. I'm hoping that some of those guys we talk about, like Smoot, maybe Dontavius Russell, is that his name, right? I don't know, from the Ohio State. Just certain guys that are kind of like, I don't want to say the bubble guys in terms of roster, but the bubble guys in terms of starting.
Wait, are you talking about Devon Hamilton?
Devon Hamilton. Why did I say Dontavius Russell's a different guy?
Yeah, he's not on the team anymore.
He's not even on the team. Thank you. I knew as soon as I said it, that was like so wrong. Devon Hamilton. Some of these guys, they're like on the bubble in terms of like, are they solid starters? Are they just rotational pieces? I want to see Doug Peterson put these guys in a position to succeed, so that way we know what we can get out of them. I don't think Urban Meyer was doing that. Doug Marrone, as good as he was for us in that short stint, he wasn't doing that. Gus Bradley sure as hell wasn't doing that with Just Get Better. So I want to see Doug pull the best out of all of our players and really take guys from, being rotational pieces to starters or starters to stars. And hopefully instead of talking about these what if guys, we're talking about like solid key pieces on like a hopeful playoff team or someone playing for games that matter in December.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, Jordan Davis coming out of Georgia this last year was the kind of defensive tackle where I was like, man, if we weren't picking first, like that's the kind of guy I want. And I know Luke was high on Jordan Davis too from talking with him. And it was just like, but again, I'm like my own hypocrite because I always tell people there's never a position too high to draft. And if he's the game-changing player for you, draft him for your team. Obviously, if you're picking 1, 2, 3, somewhere around there, you need a lot of positions, so you can take best available. But, Jordan Davis falling into the teens was laughable to me because that guy had grown man first-day starter written all over him, and I don't see any flaws in his game. I mean, the dude doesn't need to be physical or doesn't need to be like fast, agile, I guess. He just needs to overpower the guy in front of him, which I think he would do. That's the kind of guy I think the Jaguars need. Just a big, powerful guy up the middle that can make plays right over the center. It's that simple.
That simple.
Like Danny Shelton.
Like Danny Shelton. That would have been nice, Sam. You could have broke the news right here on the podcast.
Dude.
No, I did see that article pop up, but I didn't click and read it because I was like, of course this guy's going to pick the Super Bowl contending Chiefs over the back-to-back number one pick Jags.
I mean, no, the fact that he was between just us and them, though, I mean, it was probably like a money thing. Like, we were trying to throw, like, a stack at him. This dude was just like, I just want to play with Andy Reid.
Maybe that Andy Reid coaching tree.
Anyways, I think he would help, but...
Anything else on the Jags Browns before we move on? My last question on the game is going to be, and I think I know the answer for all of us, feelings after the game, good, same, or worse than they were before the game? Feelings on the team, feelings on the direction.
I would say slightly better. Not a ton better, but I was slightly more impressed leaving that game, primarily because of the starting unit.
Oh, yeah. I'm in the same boat where it's like I really enjoyed the first unit. I mean, for defense and offense, I'm actually excited to watch an actual game where they're playing the entire time. But like I said, if there's any time there's an injury or two, I would bet the entire house on the Jaguars losing that game because there's no way our backups can play.
Fair enough.
I agree. I mean, it was obvious, too, that, like, we were missing some running back depth, too. Like, we need James Robinson back, like, ASAP. That dude between the tackles or between, like, the guard and center is just, like, a different animal. Like, they kept showing that clip of, like, ETN, like, busting for that 10-yard or, like, 12-yard run. And I was like, you all forget, like, when James Robinson could do that with his, like, eyes closed. Like, he would just do it every time he touched the ball. He would just go down the middle and somehow get like 10 yards at first down. And so like ETN is definitely not that player. He's going to score from like, getting out wide and catching the ball in space. But like to have that guy kind of like in the middle, I mean, Snoop Connor's a rookie. Like he wasn't like, he's going to be basically him in that role. And once we get James Robinson back, it's going to be a really nice compliment to to ETN, but that's where we were definitely lacking, like just down the middle runs. But I mean, you can take what you can get, I guess. With the injury. So
Sam, I would say too, because I know they showed that play a lot. That was a good play, but it was just one play. I think Travis Etienne's more of that guy that with his size and speed is going to, explode through holes up the middle and bounce off of people. But James Robinson's that guy that's going to hit the hole and blow like through people. Like he's going to apply, the contact. You know what I'm saying? Like Travis Etienne, he might take a couple of hits, bounce off, and like keep going. It looks nice. But James Robinson brings the physicality that will wear down a defense, and that's what we need to hopefully then open up ETN on some of those inside runs to break free and hopefully score some long, rushing touchdowns that we haven't seen too often. And I don't know. I think James Robinson is vital when it comes to that, kind of like a Derrick Henry light in terms of just the physicality he brings.
Is it safe to say overall consensus that James Robinson is the maybe most valuable player on the team outside of Trevor Lawrence at this point, or at least on the offensive side? Or how would you phrase James Robinson as far as importance to the team?
Dude, that's what the coaches are saying. I mean, if you listen to them, they're like, this guy is our number one, like running back. Like when he comes back, he's going to demand like a majority of the carries. Like Travis Etienne is the change of pace, third down, like receiving back. He's not like that's bell cow that people are kind of making him out to be in fantasy almost. Because when James Robinson comes back, he's going to command like a majority of the carries. Absolutely. And that's what the coaching staff's saying. So it's like you kind of got to take them for their word. And like it just blew my mind. Like people kept like nutting over that clip. And I was just like, you guys forget, like James Robinson did that when he touched the ball every single time.
I think the big part of that clip, Sam, was the fact that he literally had a defender slide off of him, a linebacker come at him full speed from the side, and the guy didn't even waver his direction. Like he literally just continued running. And I get James Robinson does that, but to be able to see ETN do that off of an injury and just almost make it look like the defender was never even there, that's just incredible body control, incredible balance, which, again, if he's doing that against a linebacker up the middle, that's going to pay dividends on the outside when he's doing that to safeties and corners who aren't as physical. So I think you're 100% spot on. Once we can utilize him in the role he was meant to be utilized in, the offense is going to look even more diverse than it already does. And I think that's the key in this game. We've seen, so many other offenses that just look dynamic throughout the years have success. And there's very few offenses that are just, one-dimensional these days. There's stuff happening all over the field that you have to be aware of, and that's what makes so many teams successful.
You mentioned a good point, Justin, with putting him in his right position once James Robinson comes back, because that's my thing. I don't even know if it's only been one game anyway, but have we seen the real ETN yet? Like once James Robinson comes back and fulfills that, main running back, like starter role, that's where we're now able to put ETN in those other positions that are more, creative. Like, is he going to start out in the backfield and like maybe motion out into the slot? Is he going to be lining up in the slot? Is he going to be maybe a dual running backfield where James Robinson's in the game, but ETN can be moved around and be more of a receiving role? We haven't gotten to see that because James Robinson's out. So he's just playing that primary running back role.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't agree more with that. Anything else from you guys, Jags, Browns?
I have something. What do you guys think about Caleb on Chason? I personally think he should be traded immediately to the Browns because they will take him.
No,
Wait, who?
He's a bust. Honestly, he looks like shit. Especially in the run game, the dude just gets bodied.
Was he playing
out there?
All right.
When he's on the field, it feels like we have like 10 guys.
I don't even know who you're talking about.
Dude, I like number 40 better. We should put him in that role and just like.
Dude, that guy is good.
It's like, why is Chason even touching the field?
Give number 40 the money that we're giving Chason.
Jameer Jones. And
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I didn't know that 7 seconds ago until I just looked it up.
Well, I like him better than fucking Chase Long. In the run game, dude, like, okay, so on the run where the guy walked in, like, to the goal, like, I put that bitch on slow motion on YouTube, and it was just like, dude, the tackle has one hand just, like, extended on Chase On, and he's just completely immobilized. Like, no moves, no, like, kind of, like, trying to get in the way. Like, I mean, I get he's trying to, like, hold the edge, but it was just like he just completely gets like out of the play whenever it's coming toward him. But
it will be a bulky masterclass if he can manage to trade that man to any team. That will be a bulky masterclass.
Get any value, just get anything.
Anything.
A 7th round pick is more valuable right now than Caleb Chason.
Speaking of that, I wonder how CJ Henderson is doing on the Panthers team.
Didn't he step away from football or something?
No.
God, what a wasted first round when you think about that.
Let's forget it. Let's forget it.
Oh my God.
So bad.
Dave Caldwell masterclass.
Why are we doing this right now?
Campbell. Let's forget about.
Well, I'm curious. I want to see if the dude, like, I mean, because Balky was the one who facilitated that trade away.
All I remember was last year, second half of the year, people on the internet were saying the Jaguars won the trade with Dan Arnold because CJ Henderson, I don't even think, touched the field after one game.
Yeah.
Like he just.
Man, was I?
He got shredded.
Was I wrong about that pick, huh?
Oh, you were optimistic.
I was trying to find the silver lining. You
weren't cautiously optimistic.
I had to try to convince people it was an okay pick, and I apologize for that.
Just like Dante Fowler.
It was
Florida Gators.
It was just another Florida Gator first round bust. It's the moral of the story. You know, like Fred Taylor was like the last good one. So
Fowler was a good player. He wasn't great. He was a good player.
Oh, I would take Fowler over Chason and Henderson any day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Yeah.
Well, one was a 3rd overall pick and one was a 9th pick, but all right, like we can do this.
So I just looked it up. Report on
I'm
CBS
sorry.
Sports.
What did you just say, Sam?
Who was Fowler was the 3rd overall pick.
Oh, I totally thought you said 3rd round pick, and I was like, Sam.
And fucking Chason was the 20th. So there's a difference in talent.
Yeah, but Dante Fowler at least lived up closer to a 3 overall pick than Chason has to a 20th pick.
That's very true.
Chason, based on what I've seen from Caleb Chason and CJ Henderson, both of them should have been undrafted.
Yes.
At least Dante Fowler deserved like a 3rd or 4th round pick. And let's not even bring up Yannick Ngakoue, who is now on like his 6th team since the Jags, and he's now on the Colts, making less money than the Jaguars offered him in like a 6-year contract. But anyways, I digress because we
wait, Luke, what were you saying?
See, I just looked up CJ Henderson on a report 9 days ago is back in pads at Carolina's camp. So
nice. So
feels like they just copy and pasted that headline from when he was on the Jags.
Did the coach go and get him from his house?
Like what the hell? What the hell?
I only need 2 hours of sleep.
Yeah,
that was my favorite.
Guy's a psycho. Well, let's get into a few other topics real quick. Just literally 10 to 15 minutes. If you're watching on YouTube, go find the second video of this episode where we just break down NFL storyline shit going on in the league. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you find your podcast, just stay right here because this is the Poojie Podcast.